The last time I made a video about Falcom's music, I covered the modern era and shined the spotlight on composers that are still with the company. Now it's time to cover the golden age, when Falcom's sound team came in white hot, guns blazing for each soundtrack. Even the weird, obscure games had no shortage of amazing music. But what time frame does the golden age span? Well, first of all, don't take my word as law. I'm just some guy, nowhere near an authority on the subject. You could very well place the start date in the early 90s, around the time Brandish 2 released, or when Yonemitsu rearranged some of the early East games. Yonemitsu is the best composer Falcom's never had. He was outsourced by Hudson Soft to arrange the TurboGrafx CD versions of several East games, then disappeared. For me, the golden age starts in 2003 with East 6, and it ends in 2007 with Trails in the Sky III. But this is not the only era where Falcom's music was good. In fact, some of my favorite music from Falcom released before 2003. Some of the best composers were with the company in the 90s. And I covered the more modern composers in the last video and showcased a few of their greatest hits. But the golden age is when Falcom was consistently great. Consistency is the key word here. Let me explain. It ends with Trails in the Sky III because that was when Ryo Takeshita left the company. I'll cover him a bit later, but this was an important turning point for the sound team. It marked an increasing reliance on Jindo to perform arranged soundtracks and a ramped up use in leftovers. The two composers hired to fill the void, Momiyama and Osaki, produced no shortage of great tracks, but again, I'm looking at consistency, and these two weren't consistently great. That's probably why Falcom hired two composers to replace a single fantastic one. But why does the golden age start at East 6? Well, this marked the first time Falcom officially credited an outsourced composer, Jindo. We covered him in the first video, so I won't delve into his history too much here. But when Falcom first started outsourcing music, they didn't use these composers to compose half the soundtrack. They were mostly utilized to arrange existing music. Even though his name is first mentioned in East 6, it's likely that Jindo worked uncredited on several projects beforehand. Regardless, you knew this guy was destined for greatness when he stormed onto the scene with a killer boss tune. But Jindo didn't compose this track, he arranged it. The actual composer is a forgotten maestro named Wataru Ishibashi. Here's the original track he composed. Jindo dialed up the energy by replacing the backing synth with a guitar. Sadly, you can tell that this was produced at the height of the loudness war, when dynamic range was being forsaken. Listening to each song back to back, you can tell that Jindo's mastering is much louder. But let's backtrack to Ishibashi. He joined Falcom in the late 90s and left after the release of Xanadu Next in the mid-2000s, but during this short period of time, he made a gargantuan impact. Remember, we're sticking with East 6 onwards for this video, so I'm glossing over a large library of his work. High quality work, I should add. Plenty of fans of Falcom's music are quick to point to Unisuga as the high bar to reach when it comes to composers, but I think a large part of that praise comes from the current state of the company's sound team. During the golden age, every composer was vying for the top spot, and you could make a strong case for Ishibashi reigning as king. Most of his top-class work was produced for Trails in the Sky 1 and 2, but more than half the soundtrack for East 6 is packed with his incredible music. He was anything but boring, never afraid to experiment, but his compositions always felt controlled. It takes some serious skill to stitch together a song comprised of animal noises and have it sound like a cohesive piece. Gurumin has such a unique sound to it, and most of that credit can be attributed to Ishibashi. But of course, it's the Trail series where he's shown brightest. I'm not a fan of the Trails series, but that doesn't stop me from listening to the soundtracks, especially for some of the older games. You don't need to enjoy a game to appreciate its music. The sheer versatility of this man was astounding. From calming songs to metal and everything in between, he gave it his all. Ishibashi left before the release of Trails in the Sky 2, but that didn't stop Falcom from using his work uncredited. You can't keep songs like these locked up for long. They were begging to be shared with the world. Except, that wasn't the case with the Othen Felgana. Jindo performed the entire arranged soundtrack for this game, but there exists another album called Pre-Arranged Version. Before Jindo took over music duties for Felgana, the in-house composers strung together a complete rough draft that went unused. Some of these songs are lacking the polish you'd expect from Falcom's composers around this time, but Ishibashi still managed to mix together some great pieces that not enough people have listened to. Speaking of obscure albums, there's another one released in 2004 that compiled some unused tracks that were composed for the first Trails in the Sky. I don't think Falcom knew what to do with this music. Usually they'd repurpose these for a later game, instead of shoving them into an album simply titled Unused Music. It's not like these tracks are low quality either. They really should have been put in a game. The composers deserve more respect than this. Sadly, only the good die young. Ishibashi passed away in 2014. He was just 39 years old. It's always disheartening to see artists with genuine passion for their craft leave us so soon. You'd be hard-pressed to find a song of his that feels half-hearted or rushed. When people sing praises of Falcom's glory days, it's because of composers like Ishibashi. Let's move along to a very different composer, Maiko Hattori. Oh my god, I hate pronouncing these Japanese names. Hattori left the company just before Ys 6 release, so technically, she didn't compose during the Golden Era. Her last credited game was Dinosaur Resurrection, a remake of a game from 1990 called Dinosaur, that, from what I've played, has nothing to do with dinosaurs. But being that this is an early 2000s Falcom soundtrack, how much do you want to bet it's another masterpiece? Getting this game to run took some effort. I had to manually create folders and then guess my way through the installer, and even after I installed it, I was getting a black screen. Somehow I managed to get it running, and it's still not a smooth experience. I think you need to change the language of your PC to Japanese to fix the text issues, because this is pretty unplayable. But it's just another Wizardry clone, so it's probably not worth the hassle of getting it to work right. But the music is superb! This released a year before Ys 6, so really, you could say the Golden Age starts right here. In fact, Dinosaur Resurrection has one of the best soundtracks in Falcom's catalog. But let's keep that a secret. We can't have anyone finding out about this hidden gem. These tracks weren't composed by Hattori, they're by Hirokazu Matsumura. Probably. You see, we've run into a bit of a snag. Falcom doesn't credit each song individually, and while a lot of the newer Ys and Trails games have leaked credits, or in the case of outsourced composers, you can tell almost immediately who composed what. The older stuff is reliant on guesswork. Going by people far more familiar with these composers than I am, this next song was probably composed by Hattori, but it's ultimately an educated guess. This entire soundtrack is supremely slept on, because the game has never been localized, though last I checked Geofront is working on a localization. Seeing as Falcom reuses leftovers for many years, Hattori's music still cropped up in their games for a little while after she left, starting with Ys 6. This is the only song of hers in Ys 6 that wasn't arranged by another composer. Hattori's trademark sound is very mystical and atmospheric, so even when Ishibashi took on arrangement duty, that otherworldly feel was left intact. The last time Falcom used her music was in an obscure, strange little game called Rinne. Yes, this is a real Falcom game. I recorded this footage myself. You can't actually buy this game anymore, so don't have a guilty conscience about acquiring it. I'm not sure if Rinne has any proper credits, mostly because Falcom didn't develop it from scratch. They took over an unfinished game from a company called Both Tech, which shut down before they could finish it. So here's the deal. If there exists a complete playthrough or guide of this game anywhere on the internet, I couldn't find it. I can't even prove if anyone's beaten this game, so if you're looking to do something no one's ever done before, look no further. You might have been born too soon to explore the deepest reaches of space, but you were born just in time to be the first person to beat Rinne. From what I can gather, this game involves exploring the ruins inside of a virtual space. There's a girl here, and even though she's made out to be the main character in the intro cinematic, you don't play as her. You play as this spirit that can possess corpses. When you're in spirit form, a red counter counts down from 60 in the upper right corner. If you don't possess a corpse in time, the game is unceremoniously over. It just pauses the game without any sort of game over screen. When you kill an enemy, their corpse stays behind, and you can either possess it or save it for possession later. If an enemy kills you, it's just your corpse that dies. You're booted into spirit form and need to rush to possess a new corpse. It's an interesting mechanic, except I have no patience to trial and error my way through learning this game, especially since there's so much dialogue to blitz through, so once I died without saving, I decided I had my fill. If you don't understand Japanese, I'd say don't bother with this game. Do, however, bother with the soundtrack. Hattori left in 2002, and Rinne came out in 2005. Clearly she couldn't finish the soundtrack. I doubt Falcom was working on this game since 2002. It was probably still in Both Tech's hands at that point, which means it's possible that none of this music in Rinne was composed for the game. We'll never know. The most likely answer is that Hattori composed a few tunes, then Falcom took the rest of her unused stock music from other games, stuffed them in here and called it a day. Nobody even bothered to name the tracks. This is not a soundtrack you can throw on and tap your feet to, but it's far from a bad collection of music. There are some real gems here. The soundtrack is oozing in atmosphere. You're not gonna get this kind of sound for most games. Sure, none of these belong on a playlist of Falcom's greatest hits, but if you're looking for some easy listening music to have playing in the background, give Rinne a try. Unsurprisingly, hardly anyone knows about this game. I haven't played enough of Rinne to know if it's terrible, but I do know that Falcom pretends like it doesn't exist. It's a shame how Hattori's music was shoved in here with very little care. I think she's a supremely underrated composer that most people tend to gloss over. Alright, that's enough warm-up. It's time to break out the big guns. This is Takahide Murayama, and he might be my favorite composer to work for Falcom. He only worked there for a year, so that's saying something. He was officially credited for 3 games, and for one of those, Trails in the Sky 1, he only composed 2 songs. And alongside Ishibashi, his efforts on the Othen Felgana were discarded and sent to die in the pre-arranged album. The fact that all this pre-arranged music was treated so carelessly is very disappointing. I'm not sure why you'd take music of this caliber and just toss it aside. That leaves only 2 games where he had a substantial presence, Gurumin and Xanadu Next. 2 of his tracks also made their way into Trails in the Sky SC after he left, but make no mistake, they wound up being some of the most memorable songs in the entire soundtrack. You could literally take a dart and toss it at a list of Murayama's music and you'll hit gold. I'm not even kidding. Unisuga arranged his only other song in Trails SC, and it was a match made in heaven. You can tell he's an accomplished bassist and guitarist that understands these instruments very well, but you can tell even better in Xanadu Next. Evildoer has a small mixing issue with the guitar tracks. The lead sounds a bit too loud, and the rhythm a bit too quiet. Not to mention you won't even hear the full song in the game because the boss fight in which it plays lasts around a minute. But I still love this composition. I'd consider it in my top 5 favorite metal songs the sound teams ever produced. In 2005, Murayama was sequencing more impressive guitar tracks than Falcom's composers in 2023. For Gurumin, forget it. It's impossible to pick a favorite song. This is a game about a little girl whacking tiny creatures with a stick, yet Murayama found it prudent to focus on the guitar and shred. If bass is more your jam, you're in luck. Murayama is equally as proficient at stringing together an infectious bass line. There's even Eurobeat here, a severely underrepresented genre. This entire soundtrack is impeccable. It had to be, because it has a rhythm game aspect to it. Timing your attacks to the music results in critical hits. This silly, unassuming title that feels like an entry point for children to get into gaming is representative of the golden age. Every composer pulled his weight, working in harmony to create a rich sound profile where every song belongs. That's pretty much it for Murayama's stint at Falcom, but he's kept extremely busy since he left, working on countless indie projects. In 2023, some fans worked on an arrange album of Gurumin called Guru Guru Jam, and they even managed to get Murayama to rearrange a song. before we cover the last major composer of the Golden Age, I want to briefly cover Sonoda and Unisuga's efforts during this time frame. With Sonoda, once again he's easily given away by his trademark drum and horn arrangements. Sonoda tends to play it safe more often than not, which isn't so bad when you're composing for an RPG. Not every track can be high energy all the time, but when he breaks from protocol and stretches his creative muscles, he can jam with the best of them. As for Unisuga, I mean, what's left to say? He was a master then, and he's still a master today. Koguchi, one of the modern composers, almost assuredly takes inspiration from Unisuga's jazzy tunes from his earlier days. And while you could single out any one of his stellar metal songs and hail it as a masterpiece, I'm growing more fond of his spiritual, airy tracks lately. Maybe that's just a contrarian in me speaking, but I can't get enough of his more calming music. He knows how to show restraint with his instrumentation. The song doesn't blow its load right away, it gradually builds up. The song itself is a journey. You hear it evolve. I still can't believe that this is the second game he worked on, yet he already perfected his craft. And now it's time to talk about Ys Origin. I've been dying to talk about this game. Sonoda mostly rearranged existing tracks here, my favorite of which is Tower of the Shadow of Death, which has been rearranged more times than I can count, yet Sonoda's version remains my favorite. There's a nice selection of quieter Unisuga tracks here as well, but I can't resist sharing some more of his catchy synth. But the real star of Ys Origin is Ryo Takeshita. Like Murayama, he also worked at Falcom for just 1 year and was officially credited on 3 games. Trails in the Sky 2 and 3, and Ys Origin. Falcom saved his unused compositions and repurposed them in Zwei 2 and The Legend of Nayuta. One of his songs even managed to spring up in Tokyo Xanadu, released long after he jumped ship. Takeshita specializes in high-energy tracks that bring so much heat you can practically hear the metal dripping. I wear my preferences on my sleeve. Rock and jazz are my jam, and with Murayama and Takeshita, you get both. Listen to how Takeshita transforms this original track by Yuzo Koshiro from 1987. The key to recognizing a Takeshita song comes from his percussion. Listen for any similarities in the following tracks. Once you hear it, you won't forget it. He didn't compose much for Trails SC, but that just makes his catchy tracks stand out even more. Takeshita's best known work comes from Trails in the Sky III, clocking in at damn near half the soundtrack, and for good reason. I'm gonna resist the urge to play every single song of his. Check out the soundtrack and pick a song at random. It's guaranteed to be great. Keep in mind, Takeshita was born in '85, and this game came out in '07. He was 22 years old and producing music like this. Can you imagine being this skilled at something at 22? Almost immediately after Takeshita left Falcom, he became one of the first composers to use Vocaloids, notably Hatsune Miku, taking on the alias Deadball P. I don't know jack about Miku or Vocaloids, but it seems like his music is constantly being pulled from websites because of how explicit the lyrics are. Even the Vocaloid wiki refuses to share the lyrics for some of his songs because they go against their terms of use. I don't understand the point in trying to hide this music. You should never limit an artist's ability to share his creations just because you disagree with him. And if it's about the children, children shouldn't be using the internet unsupervised in the first place. In 2022, he rearranged the song Matoya's Cave from the first Final Fantasy, which was officially published under the Square Enix music label. And with that, we've reached the end of the short-lived golden age of Falcom's sound team. Jindo contributed a few songs here and there during this era, but it wasn't until the very next game after Trails in the Sky III, Vantage Master Portable, when his presence became more prominent. Vantage Masters, Vi, Brandish, and East Chronicles were all ports or remakes released on the PSP in the span of about a year, and Jindo took sole arrangement credit for each game. I want to stress that just because this era of Falcom's music is my favorite, doesn't mean it should also be your favorite. There are wildly different opinions on what the best is, and that sums up this situation perfectly. The truth is, there is no objective best soundtrack or era. Falcom's music is discussed so frequently because so many skilled composers have produced memorable songs for decades. This video highlights just a fraction of that magic.